With the first part of the transfer window now done, nearly £500 million worth of business has been already transactioned in the Premier League. But West Ham have yet to spend a penny. Of course, we've stated that a number of players are leaving the club, but no purchases as yet. Hardly surprising, really, I guess, given that the board keep insisting that we can't buy before we sell. But with the first part of the transfer window opening to allow clubs in the Club World Cup to bolster their squads before the tournament starts, are we to assume that the likes of Chelsea, who are taking part in that tournament, and other clubs who are taking part, are no longer interested in any of our players? For example, Chelsea were rumoured to be interested in both Mohammed Kudus and Edson Alvarez. But if they were, then surely they would have liked those players to have been part of the Club World Cup squad, no? Instead, they've now missed the opportunity to sign these players in time for that competition. So it's going to be interesting to see whether a club like Chelsea really does have any interest in the likes of Mohammed Kudus or indeed Edson Alvarez when the transfer window reopens on the 16th of June. Look, if you're new to this channel, first time that you're watching the West Ham Voice, or if you've watched me before but yet to become a subscriber, please do consider subscribing. Costs nothing to subscribe. All the content is free. But at the end of the show, please do hit the like button if you've enjoyed the content. So with the transfer window being temporarily shut, it kind of gives us a little bit of breathing space to take a step back for a moment and review what it is that West Ham United need to do when it reopens again. Now, questions keep arising that we're going to have to sell Mohammed Kudus. We keep hearing this over and over again. And I'm beginning to ask myself, do we actually really need to sell Mohammed Kudus in order to generate any income for the players that we need? You see, there has been nothing to suggest that the board are really keen to sell the player. Yeah, I'm sure we've all heard the rumours that the club have apparently offered the player to Arsenal and Chelsea, or they're welcoming bids. But have we really? Or is that just social media and journalist gossip rather than anything with real substance? Again, with Kudus currently being our biggest asset, it stands to reason that we might look to sell him to generate those all-important funds. And deep inside, I'm got to be honest, I'm kind of resigned to the fact that we will probably sell Kudus. But do we really need to sell Mohammed Kudus? Or can we generate income from the sale of other players? Now, we know there are a number of teams interested in Kudus. Again, so we hear, with Newcastle seemingly missing out on the signing of what was their key target, Brentford's Brian Mbeumo. They've now apparently turned their attention to the potential of signing Kudus instead. But whether it is Newcastle or Chelsea or Arsenal or any other club that's looking to sign Mohammed Kudus, he's not going to go cheap. Now, despite not having the best of seasons at West Ham last season, we're still going to want to get the highest bidder in for his services if he does go. Kudus himself, you know, he's ambitious. He wants to play in European football, ideally the Champions League. And given that only a few clubs around Europe and in the Premier League are going to be able to afford anywhere near the 85 million release clause that we want for him, the number of clubs who can afford him might not be that many. Certainly Chelsea, Arsenal, I'm sure they'll be able to afford him. But perhaps the likes of Spain's Atletico Madrid and France's Paris Saint-Germain are probably two other teams who may be able to afford the price tag that we put on the player. Now, Brentford are apparently demanding somewhere near the region of 65 million for Mbeumo. And if Newcastle were serious about getting him before Man United or Spurs, then they're going to have to find at the very least another 10 million on top of that figure to snatch Kudus from West Ham. Let's not forget, Kudus is, 5 years younger than Mbeumo? And Buemo, great as he is, and he's had a couple of great seasons, there's no denying that, is a player that's reaching maybe the peak, whereas Kudus has still got at least another 4 or 5 years of hitting that peak. So is it unreasonable for us to expect at least £75 million or more for Mohammed Kudus? Frankly, I don't think it is. Everyone knows what he's capable of. And one average season isn't or shouldn't stop this player from being able to deliver in the seasons coming up. And as I keep saying, he will find form again. And if we sell him for anything less than £75 million, I think we'll be mocked for having sold him on the cheap. But can we get away with not selling Kudus this summer? I keep coming back to that question. If our demands, if our asking price is not matched, well, we do have other players that we know that are on the market to sell. For example, we already know about Nifa Aguerd, pretty much nailed on that he's leaving. 4 clubs apparently in the running, of which 3 are offering Champions League football next season. I think we can confidently get 25 million plus for that player. I will be very surprised if we allow him to go any cheaper than that. And then, of course, there's Edson Alvarez, who kind of, every time he has an interview, seems to be putting himself in the shop window. Keen to leave. Apparently, there are teams around Europe that are interested, especially Chelsea, as I said, were or are, and especially clubs from Germany who have apparently expressed an interest. And I'm sure we can realize a fee of what? 45 million? Is that unreasonable? We did buy him for what? 35? We should be looking at least a 10 million pounds profit on that player. And then we have question marks over other players. Players like Emerson, Guido Rodriguez, Thomas Soke, Andy Irving, and of course, Dinos Mavropanos. Will they be retained or will they be sold this summer? Now, there's a lot of talk about Emerson going back to Italy. And apparently the latest club that's rumoured to be interested in him is Lazio, which might not be too favourable for the Lazio fans, given that Emerson was at their at the other Rome club, Roma, a few seasons back. We bought him for £13 million. And he's given us 3 pretty decent seasons at West Ham United. I remember when he came in, there was a lot of talk about being, well, certainly I was saying, a lot of talk about him being a very good wing back, but not necessarily a very good left back. He proved us all wrong. He was probably one of our best players, if not the best player, in the Europa Conference League final a couple of years ago against Fiorentina. It was a masterful performance. And if he leaves for around, what, £8-9 million this summer, I think that will be a reasonable price to get for him. And then, of course, we've got Guido Rodriguez. He's been attracting interest from 2 of his former clubs, America in Mexico and River Plate of Argentina. He may go for a nominal fee, maybe £5 or £6 million, but that's another 5 or 6 million in the coffers. And then, of course, there is Andy Irving, who made his senior Scottish debut earlier this week. Now, there is interest from Scottish clubs, apparently, and that's persisted, and we may get another 5, 6, 7, £8 million for him. And given that he needs to have game time in order to maintain his place in the Scottish senior team, then maybe Irving might be itching to leave in order to get that regular game time. And where else better than actually back in Scotland? And then there's the conundrum, of course, of Thomas Soke, where both Leeds United and Everton are apparently interested in the player for the 30-year-old midfielder. And if we sold him for something like 15 to 20 million pounds, again, that's a little bit more money going into that bank account in order to look at bringing in younger talent. And then, of course, Genoa want to keep Maxwell Cornet for another season, and perhaps they may want to actually keep him now on a permanent basis. Now, the thing that's holding that move up is his wages. He's on about 70-odd thousand pounds a week at West Ham. Clearly, Genoa can't afford that. They want to try and negotiate something. Now, interestingly, in order to negotiate something, it may mean that we might have to let Maxwell Cornet go for absolutely nothing, maybe a million or two. So all in all, these players could realize an income of something like, about £1 million, give or take. Sorry, £100 million, give or take. It's quite possible that if we generate anything up to £100 million in player sales without having to sell the likes of Mohammed Kudus, maybe Paquetá, once we know the outcome of his FA hearing, then wouldn't that be better in order to keep Kudus, keep him another season, see if we can get him back on track, and then build around him, build around Bowen, etc. Look, we're going to need at least 5 or 6 players to come in. I mean, we're losing 8 players already. We're going to lose another maybe 6 or 7 players that I've already mentioned. So that means that we'll be down to a core of something like 15 players, including Ollie Skulls remaining in the squad. Now, if we add the likes of Freddie Potts coming into that fold, and let's not forget the Tim Steidten present, Mohamedou Kante, who will join us from Paris FC this coming summer, plus the arrival of Daniel Cummings, then that takes us the squad numbers up to about 18 players. So another 5 players on top of that, 5 or 6 players on top of that, is doable. Given the fact that we're looking at players who are around about the 20, 25 million pound mark, if we do generate about 100 million pounds from player sales without Mohammed Kudus and without any other big name player, then it's quite possible that we could do our business in that way. In order to find out who we might sign, I'm doing a separate video. This is going out on Thursday morning. I'm doing a separate video which will go out later on Thursday. So do look out for that to see how we can spend the £100 million that we can generate from sales like I've said, Aguerd, Alvarez, and various others. Thank you for watching and listening. Like I said before, if you've enjoyed the content, please do hit the like button. Please do become a subscriber, and I will see you all very soon.